100 times better.
I don't even know if I want to taste it.
Hey, I'm James from Smoky Dad Barbecue, and I've set up camp in Maryland, just outside Baltimore, where I'm here to see if I can help David fix some of the issues he's having with steak. Let's go meet him.
Mushy brisket, and dry ribs.
How can brisket be both mushy and dry?
Somehow managed to hit both extremes.
You know what Aaron Franklin said? The best way to make good barbecue is to make bad barbecue first.
But when will the bad barbecue end?
Why don't you let me make the burgers in the oven?
Dry. It is so rubbery and bouncy.
Chicken skin.
Making sure it's tender.
Burn!
You are judged by your brisket.
James, I can't cook ribs for crap.
James, please help rescue David's barbecue.
Great. All right, thanks David for having me last night over for dinner to taste your version of the steak. And so in your application video, you mentioned a couple things that were a struggle in terms of knowing how to get the most out of your Kamado Joe setup. What are the 3 things that I got a chance to witness firsthand that you would like some help on with today's setup?
Yeah, so for last night's cook, I was running pretty low on charcoal, so getting this bare minimum in there was a challenge. We had just enough to get the temperature up to about 225, 250 is what I was hoping for. But during the reverse sear, which I was hoping to do, I think we ended up at 270.
Yeah.
Not nearly enough charcoal to get up there, and not only that is I didn't even think to move the grill grate down a rung lower. Not only was I unsure of how to do that, and even though my Kamado Joe was capable of doing something like that. So that was something I can certainly use some work on. Some other things that I ran into trouble with was finding the probe inside the tri-tip which we cooked last night. My goal was 115, 120, and so when I stuck it in and I saw 151, I kind of went into a state of shock thinking, oh my gosh, I just ruined this cook in front of James.
I saw the panic.
What am I gonna do? And so I took it out, put some foil around it to let it rest. I've been taught meat needs to rest. And I was really surprised to find out when I cut into it, there was still some pink. I was expecting it to be completely well done. So that was a little bit of a surprise to see not only some pink in there, but also some well done portions in there. So I think we hit the gamut between rare, medium rare, done, and well done in there. So that surprised me, and I think having a more even level of doneness would be really helpful.
Awesome. Well, I've got a couple ideas that I think will make it easier on the setup and managing our doneness and getting a more even temperature all the way through. But running out of charcoal, this is something that happens all the time. I ran out of charcoal. I've been at a friend's cottage for New Year's Eve, and they had a charcoal grill, which I wanted to do the steaks on, but they had no more charcoal. Yeah. And we were 2 hours north of the city. So if you ever find yourself in that spot again, and you've only got a small amount of charcoal left over, what you can do is open your vents all the way, get what little bit of charcoal you have left, flying as hot as it will go, and go for a caveman sear. It's your last chance to get a bit of a sear with a small amount of charcoal. Otherwise, we need to refuel. Speaking of refuel, Fogo sent along some charcoal for us to use today. Why don't we grab a bag? I'll show you how to set up and see if we can't help with your 3 areas of improvement.
Okay.
Let's do it. Okay, so for our setup, I want to show you something that I think will be a little bit easier for you to use. So the first thing we're going to do is add in a bunch of our Fogo. So if we had to guess from yesterday, how many more times did we just add?
At least 3 to 4 times more, right? We had yesterday, yeah.
So the important thing there that I always look for is I could fit my entire fist underneath where the grate would be sitting in the charcoal. So that means that we're not going to have any airflow issues. If we started to get our charcoal, touching the grate or touching the soapstone, we'd have a problem getting enough air for that charcoal to ignite completely and to get that soapstone searing hot. Make sense?
Yep.
And then the best part of this setup, I call it my double duty soapstone because it's going to serve 2 purposes for us. First, it's going to be our heat deflector plate. So not only is it much thicker than the stock deflector plate, so it takes a long time to absorb energy. So that's going to give a nice cool zone while we do the reverse sear, but it's also going to be soaking up energy the entire cook. So even if we did start to get low on fuel, it's already going to be completely heat soaked, and we drop our steak down on it after it's rested, and we're going to get an amazing Maillard reaction and great crust.
So with the thickness level of that, does it take a little bit longer to be able to put the meat on top, I guess is what I'm saying, or does that not make any difference?
Yeah, so if we, for example, added it at the end, and say we just did the normal setup, like what you had yesterday, where we went indirect, had our steak on top, and then wanted to pull out our deflectors and switch to the soapstone, in a few minutes of the steak resting, that would not be enough to get that fully heat soaked. That's why I like to have it in the grill the entire time, so that it's absorbing energy, it's nice and hot, and we want to get that until it's reading a surface temperature of over 600 degrees. And what that's going to help us do is also fix the band issue. So where we go from really well done to medium well to medium rare, and we sort of had all gradients. By having a really hot surface, when we hit it, we're going to get the crust that we want, and then everything in the middle is whatever temperature and doneness that we want all the way through.
So without both deflectors in, do
Yes.
the vents need to be situated differently, or is it going to take longer for be able to put the meat on top when it's ready to roll?
That's a good question. So yesterday you had both deflectors in. Today we have just soapstone. The vents are going to be nearly identical because we have no charcoal on the front side. So let me show you the position for the vents. We're going to go, like always, for the first part, one finger down on the bottom. And since we want to do about 250 degrees to start, that's going to be 1/8 of an inch on the inside of the first line on our control tower top. Okay. Let's go prep our steak now that we got our grill fired up. So for seasoning our steak, since we've already done an overnight dry brine, we don't want to go crazy with the salt. So you saw me, instead of using something like what you have, which is great salt, Morton's, but this is, I think I read the ratio, it's almost 10 times per gram more dense in sodium than Diamond Crystal kosher salt. So not a sponsor, just don't want to over salt our steak. And so what we'll do is we'll make up my wing dust recipe, which is very similar to our family's favorite SPG salt, pepper, garlic rub that I did as an infusion based on our favorite things. Cherry picked a little bit from Goldie's, Black's, as well as the Franklin's rub. But on thinner cuts like ribs or chicken wings or even a steak, if we were to go with that for the overnight dry brine, it's too salty. It can stand up great on a pulled pork or a brisket, but for a version of something like our tomahawk today, we want to go with something with far less sodium than that recipe. So I'm using the wing dust recipe, which is salt, pepper, garlic, a little bit of paprika, as well as cayenne pepper, and we'll mix that up, get ready to sprinkle on. And like always on a steak, if you get a chance to find something with any truffle oil in it, like the truff hot sauce that we used today, this is just going to give us a little bit more depth of flavor, and a light sprinkle on so that we don't have our seasoning cake and slide off when we go to sear the steak a little bit later on. So now that we've got our meter probe inserted to the line, this is a 1.2 meters, so it can withstand higher temperatures up to 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So we'll actually be able to leave it in the entire time for the sear. But I should ask, how do you want your steak to be finished?
Let's go with medium.
Good. I was worried you'd say ruined and overdone. No, we don't want to do that.
That's what I normally do.
Awesome. So our family favorite, I always lean a little bit more medium rare, but medium is by far the #1 popular choice. So for me, I would set the meter probe up to 114 degrees Fahrenheit, then pull it off, let it rest, because we're going to get carryover cooking. For medium, which is 135 degrees finishing temperature versus where I would be sort of in the 130, we're going to go about 5 degrees higher. So 119 to 120 degrees Fahrenheit is what will set the meter app up so that we're alerted. When we take that off, it's going to continue to carry over cook, and then we're going to wait in the meter chart till we start to see the temperatures come back down. This is really important so that we don't overshoot our temperature really far. If we were to go to a sear right away, the steak is still cooking, gaining energy, and then we hit the sear, it'll continue to go much further. So I always use the analogy, if you're accelerating on the highway, wide open throttle, and there's a cop sitting right there, the speed limit's 60 miles an hour, you don't want to go over it. If you accelerate right to 60 miles an hour and then let your foot off the gas, you're still going to overshoot 60 miles an hour, and the cop's going to invite you to the policeman Christmas banquet for speeding. And so to not overshoot 60, what we want to do is start the momentum slowing down a little bit earlier. And so that's what the 120 degrees Fahrenheit is going to give us the opportunity to do.
Okay.
Feel good?
That sounds great.
Awesome. Let's get our steak on. Okay, we're ready to throw on our steak. Grill was nice and heat soaked. I forgot to mention, past the hand test where it's warm all the way around. With a tomahawk, we want to place the bone towards the fire. So this is going to act a little bit like nature's heat shield and just make sure that we get nice even doneness. So we'll keep tracking the meter, maybe flip it halfway through just to make sure we're getting nice even cooking from both sides. But otherwise, we're not going to touch this until we see 120 degrees on the meter. Okay, so now that we've got our tomahawk on, which by the way is my favorite steak, nothing against the amazing looking tri-tip that you had yesterday. Are you able to get tomahawk steaks here?
They're seasonal, so if I go to my local butcher, they said warm weather months. So if I go to Costco or any sort of grocery store, I've never seen them. But my butcher has them. He said when it warms up outside.
Awesome.
So my guess is May to September.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank Meat and Bone for bailing us out and sending an amazing looking tomahawk so that we had one here ready to go for this episode. If you're interested, check out the Meat and Bone link down below for more details. But the other thing that I noticed when you were slicing into your steak is a little bit of a struggle getting a nice clean cut. Are your knives sharp?
No, not at all.
Awesome. Well, actually, let's do a test. This is the knife you had yesterday. So one way that we can tell real quick is the paper test. So we have a nice sharp knife. We should get a nice clean cut.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, so we are not having any luck with paper. And so I can appreciate the struggle of picking up it's one thing to learn how to run your grill, then all of a sudden maintaining knives. It's a whole other world of skills.
Yeah. All the accessories.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I did a video a year or so ago on this, but even that, with a couple times under the belt, I still find it tricky. And so our friends from Tumblr have sent along their knife roll, which just makes sharpening a breeze. Well, we've got an hour. Let's go over sharpening your knife up and see if we can have that a little bit easier when we slice into this tomahawk in about an hour. Okay, so now we're going to get to work on our sear sauce as our steak has nearly come up to temperature. We've just bumped the vent at this point to the top position so that we have a little bit less time to wait to get our soapstone up to, 600-700 degrees. So I'm just gonna add a couple spoonfuls of real mayo here, some fresh cracked black pepper. We're adding a bit more of our pepper flavor here as it will not burn when it's encased with the fat versus if we were just to put a bunch of fresh pepper on and go for a sear directly over the live fire. Some garlic powder, salt, and a little bit of red wine vinegar. And that looks like we could use a little bit more pepper and salt. All right, that looks right for brushing on once our steak is ready to be seared. Okay, according to the meter, we are almost there. So I'm just gonna do a very quick spot check now in a couple other places. This is not a massive steak, so we should be pretty close. So I think we're ready to get that off, let it rest. So we took our steak off to let it rest, which is the perfect amount of time to let our soapstone come up to temperature. When we first took an IR gun read, we were in about 270 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's very similar to where we were yesterday.
Yep.
But the 10 minutes that we waited got us up to seeing about 650 degrees Fahrenheit, which is exactly what we want for a great Maillard reaction. We brushed on our sear sauce, and as you saw in real time there, we're under 30 seconds at those temperatures to get a sear without burning. So our first two issues, we had charcoal in terms of knowing how much to get the right temperature. We also had some setup in terms of taking everything out and trying to switch gears. What's your honest rating in terms of, has this made life better? Exact same, anything you'd like to see different?
Yeah, so much easier. So first off, I usually get a little hesitant with how much charcoal I should put in because charcoal is money, right? And so I was very impressed with how much charcoal was still in there after it was all in searing temperature range.
Absolutely.
The other thing I found much easier using the soapstone, in the past with the deflector plates and the grill grates, I would have to take the deflector plates off, take the grill grates off, take the deflector plates off, then put the grill grates back on.
Right.
This was really simple. You just took one off, you flipped it on, and you're ready to roll.
Well, now comes the moment of truth. If the steak is actually any better, should we slice into it?
Let's slice into it.
All right, let's do it. All right, let's see how we did. Okay, so here's how we did. If you notice yesterday, what we were getting is medium well to, or well done to medium well to medium rare. How's that look for uniformity for you?
As far as uniformity goes, I don't know how you can do much better than that.
That's the advantage of that really quick sear. But looks don't matter, taste is what we're after. Let's get a few more slices and get everyone's reaction. So, moment of truth, let's dive in and see how it tastes. So why don't you grab any piece that you like? I'll do the same. Cheers. Oh, you're ready.
Oh, I didn't know we were going to cheers. That's right, we do that. I couldn't wait. It was fantastic. I'm trying to think of other adjectives I can use beyond fantastic.
Yeah.
I think I'm just lost of words. This is fantastic.
So what do you think of this here?
It's an explosion of flavor in my mouth right now. It's fantastic.
Well, let's. You've got some family and friends over. Why don't we ask them to do a bit of a taste? Again, we're not judging yesterday's effort, but we just want to focus on is the more uniform doneness and the crust something that they can appreciate. And would you stick with this method moving forward?
I just tried yours.
Oh, stepping up to the...
And the sear was the crucial part to keep all the juices in there. It's so juicy. I mean, it's dripping juice. It's wonderful. It's very good. That's the one that I would cook if I was cooking it. So
Awesome.
I don't even know if I want to taste it. The sear is the key.
It's outstanding. Wow. Like you were saying.
Yeah.
What'd you say? Fantastic. It's incredible. Honestly, never tasted a piece of meat like it. Really.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I've paid a lot for a lot of steak.
A lot more flavor, I would say, than the tri-tip.
So when you guys applied, everything was overdone, chili was burnt, pizza in the grill. How'd we do?
This is awesome. This is really good.
Yeah?
Yeah. 100 times better.
Awesome. We'll leave David in good hands. There we go.
David,
I poured my heart and soul into the thing. She's like, hey, you tried. That's the important part. Like, what? Now everybody in the world gets to see it.
Everyone gets to know how I even have self-esteem is beyond me.
And cut. Okay, we've just wrapped up at David's house and he is putting the kids to bed. So welcome to the drive home segment, as that's literally what I'm doing. But I wanted to recap a few of the skills and techniques that we touched on. And one thing that was really clear, I just turned the camera off, but everyone was remarking in the blind taste test, it's like, I can't put my finger on it, but what did you do to this steak? It tastes like steak and it's amazing. And so that's the really important thing that I spent some time covering off camera, which is all the little things that we did, whether it's the salt brine or adding the truffle oil as umami binder, the seasoning, and the technique with the sear sauce. This is all about enhancing the wonderful cut of meat that we are working with and not taking away from a wonderful cut like we are working with today's tomahawk by having the first thing that you taste is, oh, I taste hot sauce, or I taste just the rub, or I taste your sear sauce, and the last thing I taste is the wonderful steak. And so a whole bunch of these things done in partnership to accentuate what you're cooking versus take away from what you're cooking is the goal. And that was exactly the game plan behind our 5-layer steak crust that I shared with David today and have documented on the channel before. A couple other things that we covered in no particular order is when and where to use tools. I'm driving in a car with ABS brakes. I grew up before ABS brakes were a thing, and so can you drive without ABS? Absolutely. Does it make it a lot easier and more predictable to get a consistent result every time? Absolutely. And so when I first met David and he opened up the grill and he wasn't using any tracking or probes and he took a spot temperature and saw temps in the 150-degree range and had that moment of panic set in, these are things that we can avoid with the tools that we're using. And so by adding the meter probe, we took out the guesswork in terms of when do we need to switch from our reverse sear into our sear. The other thing that we really focused on is the technique. And so when I first met David, he wasn't really sure where to put the grid grates, had them up high with the X-ring down below, and didn't have enough charcoal to get a great sear. And so by going with a technique that'll just take the guesswork out of everything, like our double duty soapstone, it removes a lot of steps, particularly when you're just getting started, and allows you to focus on your friends, your family, and what barbecue should all be about. So that's it for this episode. I am ready to pack up the trailer and make my way to North Carolina. I'll see you in the next episode of Backyard Barbecue.
Don't be afraid to fire it up.
Nailed it.
That's so good.
Cheers.
Cheers. This is night and day.
I'm gonna have another one.
Awesome, smoky.
Restaurant quality, dude.
We have to tell people you're a chef too.
45 years in the industry.